Hey, good morning, Forrest.
Good morning, Lonnie. How you doing this morning?
I'm good. I'm good. It's a little bit back to the future for me this morning, sitting here in Manassas, Virginia, and just steps away from where we opened Odend'hal and Plaster 25 years ago. Can you believe it?
Yeah, it was. When did the lease start over there? 2000?
1999.
1999, right next door. So we're in the Salisbury Center, which is right next to where we were in the Rebiank Shopping Center, right here on Mathis Avenue. And thank you so much, Jeff, for taking care of us and getting us in here for our first podcast.
Yeah, we really appreciate it. So, there's been a lot going on in the real estate industry. Back 25 years ago, we had a cable TV show. Some of you may remember that. It was called Real Estate Talk, and it was the local cable provider, Channel 3. We're really aging ourselves right now, Forrest. But it was a pretty popular show. It was on weekly, and we talked about everything going on in the real estate industry in our local area. So we thought it would be a great idea to once again, kind of come on, be with you guys and actually talk about the real estate industry, what's going on and what's happening. So Forrest and I talked about it, and here we are, and we look forward to bringing you lots of episodes in the future. So I totally screwed that up.
No,
we could start over.
No, we're good. So we had Real Estate Talk, and it was right over at the cable center, and they had a nice setup, but it wasn't this nice.
No.
They've done a great job with this. I think it's wonderful. And it's right here in Manassas, so that's awesome for Manassas. And we had Real Estate Talk, and we got together and we had guests and folks come in, and we had our special guests and we'd record them. But what we found is it was so beneficial because not only the general public and customers and clients would appreciate what we talked about with our special guests, but we had a lot of real estate agents tuning in.
We did, yeah. And we actually had agents tell us that they used our cable TV show as a training platform, which is pretty interesting.
Well, and I think that's probably our goal now. We want to let everybody know what we're doing. We've partnered up, and we're going to start doing business together again.
Absolutely. I'm excited about it. So a couple months ago, earlier in the year, I was given the opportunity to acquire the Long & Foster brokerage in South Carolina, right outside of Charleston, in a little town called Summerville. And part of that opportunity allowed me to go out and really kind of figure out what does that look like. And, I decided to go shop around for a partner, and Next Home, what was a great opportunity for me as I shopped for franchises who would offer a really good back-end system. And then, so we opened the Somerville office. A couple weeks ago, we were able to open an office in Myrtle Beach. And now, so happy to say that, we're partners again, and we're opening right here in Manassas.
Yeah, we're opening right at 9408 Grant Avenue, 404, right here in Manassas. We're thrilled to do it. We should have our grand opening first week of September.
Absolutely.
And it'll be a Next Home office under our business, which is called the Agency Group.
Absolutely. And looking forward to, doing something a little bit different in Manassas. Can you talk a little bit about that for us?
Yeah, so we're going to do, what we're doing in Manassas is a model that was refined from the way a lot of real estate agents with other folks on their within their platform, like real estate teams, do business. They have a communication with the general public about their business. They have systems in place, and everybody follows the same system. And they have real estate agents that work for them on their team and are part of that team. So the model is a customer model. It's very customer centric. And what we want to do is we want to serve the customer. We want to go to the customer first. And then the customer has this relationship with the business, which is our team. And all the communications and the way we do business is the same way each and every time, whether it be a buyer or a seller, we're doing business the same way. And then you have the agent. Now, the agent is part of the services provided, but the beauty of what the agent's doing is instead of being their own assistant, instead of doing all of their, all the paperwork, all the things that they're not really great at, they do the agent work. They do what is necessary for an agent. They're working on the contract. They're showing properties. They're going to listing appointments. They're negotiating whatever the conditions are in the contract. They're getting the property to settlement. They're communicating with the client on each of those things as it's related to the agent. But it gives them more free time to work with more folks, so more people can experience the wonderful service that our company has to provide.
And that's exactly what you and I, even when we were, part of Long and Foster, part of the leadership team, our focus was, how do we get the agent in front of the people, in front of their sphere of influence, in front of their customers and their clients, and take care of everything else for them, right?
Right, and then they can. So if you ask yourself, what is the goal of an agent? The goal of an agent is to serve clients and to have them experience the dream of home ownership. Maybe it's getting into a rental. Maybe it's listing a property so they can now move on with their life and go somewhere else. Well, if you served 8 a year, that's great. But what if you could serve 80 a year? What if you could help 80 people realize that dream? And the system is based around the efficiency of agents so they can maximize service in the client.
Absolutely. And then you can't ignore, the elephant in the room, right? Which is the NAR settlement, the big lawsuit, the changes in our industry. How is that going to play into this new idea for a real estate organization?
Well, the beauty of what has occurred is, I believe, and I think Lonnie feels the same way, that this settlement that has occurred in the real estate industry is actually great news for not only the real estate industry, but also for the client, also for the customer. The general public should understand how our business works, how we get paid, who we represent, and the amount that we're going to make, or the percentage we're going to make to represent them. I think that transparency is actually going to bring a lot more credibility to the real estate industry and the real estate agent. A lot of folks like their real estate agent, but they don't think too highly of the industry. And we have to ask ourselves, why is that? Well, it may just be because it's confusing.
Yeah.
So the lawsuit is driving it down to a method of doing business as it relates to agents' pay. Who's paying them, who their loyalty is, where their fiduciary duty is. And I think that's what's going to actually add credibility.
I think so too. And let's go back a little bit, because as I talk to buyers and sellers out there, as I talk to agents, surprisingly, the majority of them know nothing about the lawsuit. And even though it's highly publicized, it's been out there in the news. So let's go back and talk about, how did we end up where we are today?
Yeah. So the National Association of Realtors started in 1908, had a code of ethics that started in 1913. And the code of ethics was developing the relationships with the public, adding credibility to the land. The code of ethics starts with, under all is the land. And they realize how important the land is and how important it is to have credibility when land is transferred from one party to the other. So there is no question who owns it, and it's a very respectable process that is very credible. So there is no argument in the future. So they wanted to make sure that they were acting extremely professionally in doing this. So the code of ethics is how the agents deal with each other. The section of how we deal with the general public. And in doing business with each other, and dealing with the general public, if we all are caring and respectful, the code of ethics is based on good, fair, honest business.
And, the early 90s is when I started doing business and practiced full time, right out of college. And part of the way we did business is we represented the seller, right? There was a fiduciary responsibility to the seller. And by doing so, the buyer worked with an agent that was actually a sub-agent of the seller, which is very different. In 1994, that changed for Virginia. Virginia then became a buyer-broker state, and that's when buyer brokerage became prevalent here. Talk a little bit about that and how we've been doing business since 1994.
Well, like Lonnie said, so I started in March of 1990 as well. So what would happen is you would meet with a seller when you took a listing, and you would negotiate the commission. And when you negotiated the commission, you would also negotiate what portion of that commission was going to be offered to anybody representing a buyer. Now, the reason that the listing agent as well as the consumer thought it was important to have an offer of compensation to the buyer is because there were a lot of agents working with buyers. Now, in 1990, we were very much in what's called a buyer's market. When supply and demand is about at 6 months, it's an even market. Nobody has really the advantage over the other. The seller doesn't have the advantage over the buyer, and the buyer doesn't over the seller. Once it exceeds 6 months, it's a buyer's market, which means there's a lot of listings and not a whole lot of buyers. So in 1990, we were very much in a buyer's market. As a matter of fact, we were in a buyer's market until the spring of 1999. Only then did things start changing. We were in such a buyer's market for that entire span of time. Prices didn't go up. They actually remained the same and actually worked their way down. So envision working with buyers and putting them in your car and looking at 30 properties on Saturday and then saying, I'll see you tomorrow morning. Same place, and you'd pick them up. And there was no sense of urgency for the buyer because the interest rates really weren't moving at that point in time. So there wasn't urgency in regards to the interest rates. And there wasn't any sense of urgency because there was just so much supply that if they waited long enough, it was likely that the price was going to go down a little bit.
Not at all like today.
Not at all like today. So we were in very much a buyer's market, and the seller, the fiduciary responsibility from the agents was to the seller. And the seller knew this, and even when you were working with buyers. So envision working with a buyer, spending every weekend with them for months. And every time they got to a point where they were interested in a property, you had to remind them, remember, I work for the seller. Okay, my duty is to the seller, and please do not tell me anything that is going to compromise your position or because I'm going to have to share it with the seller. So anything you tell me, how much you would pay for the home, I'm going to have to share it because I owe my allegiance to the seller. That is, and the whole reasoning behind that was because the seller was paying. Well, as Lonnie said, in 1994, that changed, and it took a while. The industry was wrestling with this to try to figure out, and I think even in the National Association of Realtors, I think at one time it said, maybe we should just be called facilitators. And agents said, facilitators? I took a 60-hour course. I had to pass a national and state test. I am more than a facilitator.
Absolutely.
I do so much more. And the reality is agents do a lot. And it's one of the only industries where you only get paid if you succeed. So envision a football team that loses every game and none of them got paid the whole year. That's how real estate works. If you are not successful, you can work with buyers every day of every year. But if you don't actually get to the point where you ratify a contract and it goes to settlement, you're not going to get paid. So now in 1994, like Lonnie said, we had a situation where the real estate industry decided, without getting the seller in the room, that it's okay for the seller to pay the entire commission as well as the buyer's portion of the commission, and the real estate fiduciary duty is now to the buyer when you're working with a buyer.
Yep. Yep. It's a split duty at that point. You have a totally separate person representing the buyer, then representing the seller, but the seller is still paying the entire commission. So how are things going to be different after August 17th?
Well, so if we go back and we say, okay, the seller paid the commission, and let's say there's two parts to that commission. So the real estate agents, the real estate agency, the brokerage company that represented the seller, actually signs what's called a listing agreement with the seller. And in that listing agreement, it says this is the total commission that's being paid. And this portion is what's going to go to the buyer's agent. And a lot of companies said, hey, we want to have this portion on every one of our deals going to the buyer agent. So the seller really isn't negotiating that amount of money. The agent's saying, hey, if you want to use my company, this is the amount we need to put there. And now anything above that, we're going to be able to, that's going to be kept by my brokerage company on the listing side. And then when the actual deal was ratified, a contract was ratified and it went to settlement, it was the responsibility of the brokerage company, the listing company, to get the commission, and it was their responsibility to make sure that the buyer's side of it, the brokerage company that represents the buyer, received their commission. So
and the platform that everyone used to figure out, okay, what is the commission on the buy side? What's being offered by the listing company was the MLS, right? And so part of the NAR settlement has to do with new rules with the MLS, where the compensation will no longer be allowed to be displayed on the multiple listing service, which changes the way we're going to do business, right? And talk a little bit about what that looks like, and also why sharing commissions going forward is probably not a good idea.
Right. So like Lonnie just mentioned, the MLS. So think of it this way. To be a member of the MLS, you had to be a realtor. And to be a realtor, you had to join your local association, which collected for the local association, the state association, as well as the national association. Now you're called a realtor. For instance, in the state of Virginia, you don't need to be a realtor to sell real estate. You can have a real estate license. To be part of the National Association of Realtors, be held accountable by the National Association of Realtors Code of Ethics, you need to be a realtor. Only then, when you're a realtor, could you join the MLS, because it was a membership. So now envision this. You have the National Association of Realtors that is huge in policy and, as far as, with RPAC, with the Realtor Political Action Committee. They're all made up of realtors. They're driving policy in the way the MLS does business. And part of that was if an agent lists a property and it goes public, the public is made aware of it with a sign or advertisement, that within such a small period of time, that had to be put on the MLS. And once it hit the MLS, there had to be an offer of compensation to the buyer's agent. It was mandated. Now, it could be as little as a penny, but it had to be on there. So the way the lawsuit laid out was it connected the dots between the National Association of Realtors, the MLS, and the real estate companies, because all of these entities involve realtors, and the forms that are created in the local associations that we all use, they were made by a collection of realtors from different companies. So they were able to say that if it has to do with compensation and it's a collection of realtors creating one form used by all and a system used by all, that we have conspired to set a commission rate. And it's elevated beyond where it should be.
Sure. I mean, it was it was a single process, right? Everyone used the same process. And, let me be clear, Forrest or I, we don't think, the realty organization did anything wrong. The intent was to give buyers out there some sort of representation and to, at the same time, be able to make sure you're giving, giving opportunities for the seller to be able to have maximum exposure for their property. So the intent was not, not to be transparent, but what ended up like coming to surface through these lawsuits were that, maybe not everyone felt that way, right? And I know I was sitting in a meeting a year ago with a lot of real estate leaders, and I remember talking about the lawsuit, and I was the only one in the room that said, "Hey guys, we're going to lose." And everyone looked at me like I had three heads. But the reality is you have a jury who knows nothing about real estate and how real estate has worked for decades, right? And you have attorneys who stand to make a lot of money if they're going to win this lawsuit. And it was the perfect storm, right?
Yeah, it was. And from a realtor standpoint, it's just like I come from a law enforcement standpoint. There are laws in place on how a police officer is to conduct himself, and you follow those laws. And whether it have to do with Kerry versus Ohio, which is a pat down to make sure an officer's safe if they believe somebody has weapons, a search warrant, you get a search warrant, but there's exceptions to the search warrant, incidental to lawful arrest. There's rules, and you just follow the rules. Well, what is the rule today may not be the rule tomorrow. It may change. So if one of those rules changes and one of those exceptions to the search warrant are no longer in existence, they say it's actually illegal to do that. You stop doing it.
Exactly.
You just stop doing it. In real estate, when we heard of this lawsuit, the reason that most realtors did not think and most companies did not think that we would lose the lawsuit is because they thought they were doing business right. They were doing business based on the rules. They set themselves to the highest standard, the National Association of Realtors. They wanted to be part of it. They wanted to pay the association dues because they wanted to be held accountable to the Realtor Code of Ethics.
Yep.
And so when you think you're doing something right and somebody says you're not, you get offended, you get defensive because you had no intent to do it any way other than right. And I think that is why the realtors feel and felt the way they did when the lawsuit came out. And they were so, optimistic that they would win because they're saying we do business right. Everything we do is to serve and in the best interest of our client. But when you're looking at it from the outside and you have a jury trial, and now you're asking the general public that have an array of different jobs with everybody on that jury, they don't get the where are we going with this? Intricacies. They don't get how we do our business. And it takes a lot of education for us to even know.
Yeah, and the average consumer only buys what, 4 houses in their lifetimes, right?
4 houses in their lifetime. Right now, it's every 11 years. Our contract, just as an example, changes twice a year. And so keeping up with the business is not something that the consumer does, and they very much rely on their agent to tell them how it works.
So it's not a surprise. Not a surprise that we lost.
It's not a surprise that we lost because it was it's a trial that brought in, I think that most realtors, once they heard everything in the trial, probably learned a lot themselves, much less the general public trying to understand it, sitting in a jury and making a decision. So as they start connecting the dots between the National Association of Realtors, made up of realtors benefiting, companies, real estate companies, made up of realtors benefiting, and then Bright MLS, that is has a lot of policies and rules through realtors. Even on their boards, there's realtors involved benefiting. It looks like a conspiracy.
Yeah, yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit about where we are today and like what kind of changes will probably happen as a result of this. I mean, looking back at the real estate industry, initially we were, a brokerage centric industry, right? So I remember back in the day, I helped my dad organize his MLS cards when I was 7 years old. He was in the business. It looked like a shoebox, right? He'd get a delivery of perforated cards, and I would help put it in order for him by price and address. And that's how like the MLS started. But at that point in time, the brokerages basically got the lion's share of the commission because they controlled. Not only did they control their agents and what their agents were doing, but they also controlled the information. If you remember, this was before the internet, right? And everyone was so afraid that once the information got out, brokerages would no longer necessarily need to be part of the process. Then we moved to the next stage or life cycle of the real estate industry, and it's being agent centric. So the pandemic didn't help with that. So we have agents who are like, I don't need a broker, I don't need that partnership, I want the lion's share of the money, and I could care less about the tools and resources that are being provided to me, right? I think we're moving into a third stage or a third life cycle, and that is consumer centric, because I feel like consumers are going to demand that their needs be put first, right? And the agents and the brokerages that are able to deliver that will succeed at a very high level. What do you think about that?
No, I think that's true. You have a lot of agents, and the company is providing them with pretty much, I always call it like a snap-on tool truck full of everything that they need. Mm-hmm. But the agent has a choice what they use. And some will use multiple tools and some will use just a couple. So you don't get a consistent service. And what we know about business is customers like consistency. Mm-hmm. They like to know that if they sign up with your company, things are going to be done the same way. They're going to be efficient. It's going to be cost efficient as well as efficient with the job. They don't want surprises, and they would prefer it to be problem free, and so they really enjoy having the same. They really enjoy having the same consistent service every time. Well, when you have agents that are independent contractors and they can do business their own way, it is impossible for a company to have consistent service. Mm-hmm. Because discretion is the enemy of any system. So if you want consistency, then the company has to have a relationship with the customer and company. And the agent does the agent's part, but the company has all the systems in place to create the same atmosphere, the same experience.
I totally agree. And, I think Next Home, the agency group, we've been talking a lot about this and how we're going to move forward to enhance the consumer experience, right? I mean, we're always going to take care of our agents and the people who partner with us. I mean, they're always going to be family, but at the end of the day, we're going to make sure the consumer is taken care of. So talk a little bit about our plans for how we make that happen as an agency.
Well, what's great about the Next Home and all of its systems is if you were to sit down and have a group of agents and say, what's the ideal back system for every piece of how we do business, that's Next Home. Mm-hmm. So you're under the umbrella of Next Home, but you can grow your business and your locations of business mm-hmm. under that umbrella, which means you have the opportunity as a business owner to create your own systems mm-hmm. and comply with rules and regulations of your state and the federal government. So us doing business with Next Home means we can meet with a customer and we can say that we would love to list your home. We'd love for you to be our client, and have a conversation about commission. We can say that this is what our company is willing to list your property for, and here's everything that we're going to do for that percentage or that dollar amount. And it's your choice. It empowers the customer to make a choice whether they want to hire you and also whether they want to pay the other agent and how much they want to pay the other agent. And we believe if we are going to have the responsibility, the fiduciary responsibility of representing the listing agent, the seller of that property, that it should be their decisions. They're the ones that are going to be held accountable to the consequences of those decisions. They're going to benefit from them, and if there's any loss, they're going to lose from them. But it's their decision, assessing all the information we provided, industry information, supply and demand, market information for their local market. Then they make the decision as to where the money's going to be dispersed, what they're willing to pay, and then the company and the agent can decide whether they want to partner to do that piece of business.
And it also gives the buyer more choices, right? If you think about it, I think buyers in this new market it won't be unusual to say, hey, let me see your resume. And a seller, if a seller is agreeing to pay a commission of a buyer broker, they could possibly ask for the resume of the buyer's agent, right?
Right. So the way that we suggest business is done is you meet with somebody who would like to sell their property, and you market their property for a certain percentage or a certain amount of money, whatever is agreed upon between the parties. Once you get into a contractual agreement, which is the listing agreement, the seller now gives the agent the authority to communicate to everyone with interest in that property, to bring forward a contract. And if there's any concession that the buyer is requesting, which could be their closing cost or their obligation to pay their buyer agent, let's look at that concession with the totality of the entire contract. It's only a piece of the contract. The settlement date, how much the offer price is, whether there's going to be inspections. All of it is part of the contract. And we believe that's most responsible to the seller, because there are going to be buyers that will say, hey, I'm paying my own agent, but since you're offering this percentage, we'll take it in closing costs. You see, you're not representing the seller if you're offering concessions before the other party even surfaces. How could you be? It's like, hey, I'm gonna go ahead and prime the pump by throwing money out there. By the way, it's your money to the seller. And before we even have anybody surface, and the seller may say, well, I thought we were in a seller's market where we could expect, maybe 20 offers. Maybe somebody doesn't ask for any closing costs. They may not ask for their agent to be compensated, and they may even pay more than what we're asking for. Absolutely. Is that possible? Well, sure it is. Well, wouldn't that be the best way to represent a client?
And in future podcast, I think we really should drill down on, the fiduciary responsibility to the seller. And, if you're putting out there up front what they're willing to pay, yet someone was willing to pay more until they saw that concession, are you really representing your seller properly? So,
right. And I think this also is it's not a great comfortable conversation with listing agents, because the seller may very well ask, out of the portion of commission that your company is collecting, what goes to you? How much are you making? The public may think, well, you're on a 50-50 split. Now, there may be agents on a 50-50 split. I'm not saying that there's not, but nationwide, every dollar that comes in, 85 cents goes directly to the agent. And then on top of that, the companies will charge an additional fee, and they'll call it something. It'll be called a resource fee, a flat fee, an admin fee, which is, by definition, a real estate commission. So it's a commission on top of a commission.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And in those conversations, if we are the excellent agents want total transparency with everything in the market, especially when they owe a fiduciary responsibility to a client. Total transparency is talking about all of those things.
No, I totally agree. And, you know, industry experts are saying that we could lose as many as 40% of our sales force by the end of the year, real estate salespeople. But you know, and they look at that as, you know, is that a good thing or a bad thing? I'm not sure we'll lose 40%, honestly. But what I do think at the end of the day, I think we are going to have professionals, like true professionals in this business. So there's no longer going to be the cousin Vinny that gets a phone call when someone has walked through an open house and they're like, oh, that's right, you know, Vinny has a real estate license, so he can make a commission. You know, those types of agents are going to go away. It is going to be really an incredible opportunity for those agents who are professional, who do good business, and they're just going to get a bigger piece of the pie, and the consumers are going to be better served.
Using your example, envision this. An agent with only a few days of experience in the business. They've been licensed for a few days. Somebody uses them because there's a set amount posted on the multiple listing service that says that, let's just use an example of 2.5%, $500,000 home. A lot of money is going to be made. And the consumer says, look, you're going to make a lot of money, but you have very little experience. So split it with me. I'll use you, and you split what you make with me.
Or rebate it back, yeah. So you're...
And they'll use the word rebate, but a rebate is getting money back that you have paid.
Good point.
This is not, and they make it so tough. You have to cut the cardboard box up and mail it in by a certain date, and it has to have a secret handshake inside, the whole thing. So a rebate is a rebate. You're getting something back that you paid. This is a gift. This is not a rebate. The buyer didn't pay any of this. So what's happening now is the communication between the agent, the buyer's agent, and the agent is now going to come down to not how much each one of them are going to make. How much is the buyer going to pay? What are you, Vinny, cousin Vinny, what are you worth to that buyer to negotiate the very best terms and deal with the seller?
And to get it to closing, and, you know, all the things that are necessary. And I'm just not so sure, you know, that 40% of our agent population disappearing is a bad thing, because it's going to make us better.
Yeah, I think there's a nationwide 1.5 million realtors. And if we had 1.5 million professionals that did it right, and that once they were told the rules have changed, embraced that and said, I am a professional. I want to do the business right.
Exactly.
And then they work towards, as James Wiggins says, our CEO, where is the puck going to be rather than where is the puck currently?
Today.
Let's go to where it's going to be. So the beauty of what Lonnie and I are doing is we have common beliefs, and we have a model that's customer centric that we love. On top of that, there was a national lawsuit, and the national lawsuit allowed leaders in this industry to decide what it's going to look like beyond the Department of Justice being involved. What is the industry going to look like? Do you have the vision to see how business should be done? And then practice business that way now.
Exactly. And it's, you know, it all boils down to leadership, right? So for me, when I was searching for a franchise partner, you know, I gravitated towards Next Home not because, their color was orange or they had Luke the dog, which are both great things, the mascot and the
I
color,
love
right?
dogs. You know that, Lonnie.
Yeah. But the reason I gravitated towards them, had to do with the podcast, the Real Estate Insiders Unfiltered, that James Dwiggins and Keith Robinson was doing. I ran across it and I heard these guys, and these guys were talking about all of the same things that you and I have been talking about for years, right? And I'm like, oh my gosh, there is a leader in real estate who gets it. And not only, they're not talking about what's happening today. They're talking about where this industry is going to be, 6 months from now, 2 years from now, 5 years from now. And I knew from that moment that's who we wanted to partner with moving forward.
Yeah, so it's easy to have something happen and be a Monday morning quarterback, as they say. You know, it's something different to anticipate something happening and preparing for the consequences of that. So hope for the best, prepare for the worst.
Mm-hmm. And hope is not a strategy.
James, hope is not a strategy. So James was talking about the lawsuit and how likely it was that we were not going to win, although he wished we would. Mm-hmm. He said, guys, you got to have a plan B. We got to prepare for this. This is not potentially going to go well for us. Months and months and months before the trial even started.
Yep.
And that's leadership.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And being prepared, being a leader is about having vision, right? And seeing where things are going before everyone else, right? So that you could lead your flock or your troops in the right direction. So I think the real estate industry is ripe for some really great leaders right now.
Yeah, I think a lot of companies seek leaders.
Yep.
And hire managers.
Agreed.
Because I don't think they can handle the truth. A leader is the one in the room that's saying, hey guys, I think we're going to lose this lawsuit. We better start preparing. That's a leader. A leader is one that's saying, what are we doing in the event? How are we going to serve our clients in the event? How is this industry going to move forward? What's the conversations that we are going to have with our customers and clients, with our employees? How are we going to maintain a level of integrity in a business that we wanted to always have integrity with? Mm-hmm. Losing a national lawsuit. What are the talking points? That's leadership.
And having a plan.
And having a plan.
Putting the plan out there. And what I'm seeing a lot of right now is, brokerages and agents trying to figure out how to still do business the same old way instead of putting their energy and resources into, okay, let's figure out what's best for the consumer moving forward. Let's stop trying to make what will no longer be acceptable in the future work, right?
Yeah, that doesn't, in the national lawsuit went against the National Association of Realtors, the MLSs, and the brokerage companies. The agent was not involved in the lawsuit. They were protected. Once it is determined that the manner in which we're doing business as it relates to compensation of agents was done improperly and considered to be price fixing, a conspiracy.
Yeah.
And now you decide to do it wrong, to use special codes. I'm going to use a fancy code in the MLS so you'll know I'm still getting paid.
Yeah.
You're not the only one thinking about that. So if your mindset is workarounds, then your mindset is violation of the law. And if it's violation of the law, you're no longer protected.
Correct. And sharing commissions, even though, perhaps it's allowed, moving forward, is it a good idea to share commissions when you don't have to, right? When you walk into a listing appointment, you're negotiating your fee with that seller, and that fee that may or may not be paid to a buyer broker needs to be negotiated in the offer. It does not. Agents need to stop, or brokerages need to stop sharing commissions.
Right. Can you envision? A seller's always been able to contribute to a purchaser's closing costs. And from 1990 to the spring of 1999, they did that on a regular basis.
Oh yeah. They had to.
But you wouldn't put in a seller's market where the seller is very much in the driver's seat, you wouldn't start throwing, hey, my seller is going to pay $15,000 towards your closing costs. Mm-hmm. And then you get a cash deal and the seller is paying their closing costs. Mm-hmm. How is that at all representing the seller? Well, if you're negotiating a commission on behalf of a buyer at the listing agreement, when you don't even have a client yet because you're speaking with someone to be as a customer, now you're going to sign them up to be a client. And the first action you take with this client is negotiating an amount of money to give to somebody else that hasn't even appeared yet.
Doesn't even exist.
The buyer doesn't exist. The agent doesn't exist. I say that you say, this is what I'll market your property for, to get all of this interest. Mm-hmm. And once we have this interest, let's see what they need. Mm-hmm. Let's see what they ask for. If they're going to elevate the price and pay their own closing and not ask for inspections because they really, really want your home, then you may have to make no concessions.
Yeah, it's all part of the negotiation process.
We're negotiating before there's even another party to negotiate. We're negotiating with ourselves, and we're negotiating with ourselves for a very selfish reason, to ensure that a buyer's agent, someone that may be with our company, may be a friend of ours, is going to be paid, and how much they're going to be paid regardless of their experience.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think eventually, now companies feel like they can still do that and under certain circumstances, and that's fine. But I think eventually it's going to be the companies that say, okay, we're going to do this differently. We're not going to share commissions moving forward. We understand that the sellers will have control when it comes time to negotiate that offer. And I think that's just a much cleaner way to handle this moving forward. And it provides the transparency that everybody is looking for.
Right. It's a transparency, and it's actual leadership is having the vision to see what things look like. Henry Ford put it best. He says, if I asked people what they wanted, they would say faster horses. Mm-hmm. He had to have the vision to know. Same thing with the iPhone. Same thing, with Bill Gates and Microsoft. He approaches IBM, and IBM says, there's no way there's going to be a computer in every home. Well, in some senses, they were right. There's a computer in every pocket.
Yeah.
In every car, in every kindergartner's hands.
Absolutely.
And so Bill Gates says, no, I don't see it that way. So why would we just take little bits and pieces? Why wouldn't we say, as leaders, we know where this is going to go. Let's get there first. Exactly. And that way we can celebrate with our clients that we had this vision, we're where we need to be, and we're totally transparent while everybody else is trying to catch up.
Absolutely. Well, I think we've beat this horse. Right?
I think it's
dead.
You can take it one more time, Lonnie, if you want
for
to.
right now. But
yes,
let's go ahead and talk a little bit about the Manassas office. Like, what do you see in Manassas? What are you looking for? What are we going to do there?
Yeah, so we have 1,650 square foot in Manassas 404. So this is what we want. A lot of companies want as many agents. There's a term, if they can fog a mirror, because they don't know who's going to succeed. And it's tough to know who's going to succeed, really, because you don't know what's inside of a person. Mm-hmm. They can have the best education, very, very smart, speak several languages, have an engineer's degree, but it doesn't give them the drive.
Correct.
The ambition, the why that is needed to push forward and actually be a great real estate agent. And that's why great real estate agents come from, I was a police officer, did real estate and police work for 9 years, and then eventually was making a lot of money in real estate, so I left police work. You have teachers, firefighters. There was a Brenda Shiplet was with our company. I know you know her well.
Yep.
She was a sweetheart, wonderful, elevated to president of brokerage. She's a teacher. We have just so many different industries where people had come forward and wanted to be realtors and were great realtors. But the reality is 1 in 10 make it.
Yeah.
So I don't want to hire 20 agents. I don't want 100 agents. I don't have a mirror.
Exactly.
But we are only looking in Manassas. If you are a non-Long and Foster agent, and I can't solicit Long and Foster agents. We have a non-solicit.
We love you guys.
We love Long and Foster agents. Work with Long and Foster folks for 20 years. We think they have some of the best agents in this industry, and we just can't hire any Long and Foster agents or brokers. But if you are a non-Long and Foster agent or broker, we're looking for just two agents. The customer experience is what is essential to us. So the customer experience, Lonnie, will be the customer will know exactly the system that's going to be used from start to finish. The company will have communications with the customer before, during, after, even after settlement, constant communications with updates, market updates, conditions of any industry changes. And the agent will be part of the system. Mm-hmm. So I will personally mentor the two agents. We will bring those two agents up to a high level. So we want people that have a positive mindset, that are very ambitious, that are willing to learn. Mm-hmm. I will give you my full effort to teach you how to be the very best agent that I can teach you to be. And you will do the portion of the deal that is related to the agent. And the beauty is that all of the things that you wouldn't necessarily need to do can be done by someone else. The other 85% is all done by someone else. So instead of serving 6 clients, 8 clients a year, we hope that you will serve 35 to 40 clients a year. We will have a system that can be taken over by the other agent or myself, so you can go on vacation. Mm-hmm. You can
have
leave.
A life.
You can have a life.
Yeah.
You can leave your phone in the room. Mm-hmm. Enjoy yourself, because when you have a system, people can pick it up and take it to the end and completely doing the tasks that are necessary, regardless of where the client or customer is at that point. Somebody else can pick it up. Just like in any other industry where they have systems, somebody else can take it. You leave the job for a couple weeks, you go with your family, you recharge on vacation, you come back fresh. That's a better agent for themselves and their family, and it's a better agent for our company, our industry.
And it's a different approach too, right? Because everyone's not number one, because we know every agent's number one. It's not about volume. It's not about all of that. It's about, at the end of the day, are you making a living, and what's your bottom line? Right.
Right. And customers and clients want to know, they love a system that they can count on over and over again. And we see it every day. We see it at Starbucks and in Chick-fil-A, anywhere you want to go. You see it in Orange Theory. You go in, you know exactly what's going to happen, how long it's going to take. The entire system, and then you're out the door. That's why Orange Theory just does so great. People are willing to pay about 6 times more than they would pay going to a regular gym. They're only there for an hour. Somebody is telling them what to do through the whole workout. They just love the system of it. And that's what we're going to finally be able to do as a company, rather than just as an agent, as a company, to be able to show them in that Manassas office that there is going to be one system that they can count on, and it's going to be a very thorough system, and they are definitely going to believe that they received their value in commission.
Absolutely. So we're very excited about this model. And just to let everybody know, we're one company, so we are right outside of Charleston, South Carolina in Summerville. We just opened an office in Myrtle Beach. And the Manassas, Virginia office will be our third office. We offer property management, vacation rentals, and we're a full service brokerage. We have some great people already affiliated with us, and we're so excited about the future.
All right. So if you are interested in joining the Manassas office, give me a call.